Princess Kira of the Valen Empire stood on the crystal balcony overlooking the assembly hall. Below, delegates from 100 worlds gathered for the Summit of Stars. Her silver skin gleamed under the orbital lights as she surveyed the crowd with barely concealed boredom. Her advisor, Commander Vex, approached quietly. "Your Highness, the human delegation has arrived." Kira wrinkled her nose. "Humans. Why my father insists on inviting them, I will never understand. They've barely left their own solar system. Protocol demands it, Princess. Earth was granted provisional membership last cycle." "Provisional," Kira repeated with a slight laugh. "How fitting. Look at them down there, Vex. So small. So fragile. No natural armor, no enhanced strength, no telepathic abilities. What could they possibly offer an empire that spans 3 galaxies?" Vex said nothing, though his expression suggested careful neutrality. Kira turned away from the balcony. "Come. Let us greet them and fulfill this tedious obligation. The sooner we acknowledge their presence, the sooner I can return to matters that actually concern the Empire." The human delegation consisted of 5 individuals dressed in simple navy uniforms. They stood in a tight cluster near the entrance, looking distinctly out of place among the towering reptilian Kryn, the floating energy beings of Lux, and the 4-armed warriors of Thresh. Ambassador Chen led the group. Beside him stood Gary, a young security officer on his first deep space assignment. He was 26, with dark hair and observant eyes that constantly scanned their surroundings. "Remember," Chen whispered to his team, "we're here to listen and learn. Earth's membership is still under review. We cannot afford incidents." Gary nodded, though his jaw tightened. The stares they received weren't curious but dismissive. He'd felt prejudice before, but never from alien species on a space station orbiting a neutron star. A melodic chime rang through the hall. All conversation stopped. Princess Kira descended the central staircase, her flowing robes shifting colors from deep purple to brilliant gold. She was stunning and she knew it. Power radiated from every movement. "Welcome, delegates," her voice carried effortlessly. "Let us begin the Summit of Stars." The opening ceremony lasted 3 hours. Gary stood at attention behind Ambassador Chen, his feet aching in the artificial gravity that was calibrated slightly too high for human comfort. Everything here seemed designed for species stronger than his own. Princess Kira gave the keynote address from her throne, elevated above all others. She spoke of unity, strength, and the continued expansion of civilized space. Her words were beautiful but hollow to Gary's ears. He'd read the briefings. The Valen Empire dominated through military superiority, not diplomacy. When she mentioned Earth, it was brief. "We extend acknowledgement to our newest provisional member, the humans of Earth. May they learn much from the elder races during their time among us." The tone was unmistakable. They were children being tolerated at the adults' table. Several delegates from allied species chuckled. The sound echoed in the vast chamber. Ambassador Chen's expression never changed, but Gary noticed his hands gripped the armrests of his chair. Beside Gary, Lieutenant Park's breathing quickened with suppressed anger. The ceremony continued. Not once did Princess Kira look directly at the human section. That evening, Gary walked through the station's observation deck. The view of the neutron star's accretion disk was breathtaking, but his mind was elsewhere. "Quite a welcome," Park said, joining him by the viewport. "Could have been worse," Gary replied. "Could it?" Park shook her head. "Did you see how she looked at us? Or rather, how she didn't?" Gary had noticed. Princess Kira's gaze had passed over them like they were furniture. He'd dealt with arrogance before during his military service, but this felt different. This was institutional. Cultural. An entire civilization believed humans were inferior. "We knew this wouldn't be easy," he said finally. "Knowing and experiencing are different things. Park sighed. My grandparents fought for respect on Earth. I joined the space program thinking out here, among the stars, things would be different. That we'd all be equals facing the universe together. Maybe someday, Gary offered. Maybe. Park didn't sound convinced. Just stay sharp. Ambassador Chen warned us some species see our weakness as invitation. Don't wander alone. She left him with that warning. Gary remained, watching the stars, wondering what humanity had to do to prove themselves. The next morning brought the first working session. Delegates gathered in smaller groups to discuss trade, borders, and mutual defense agreements. The humans were assigned to Observer Section C, a designation that meant they could watch but not participate in votes. Ambassador Chen accepted this with diplomatic grace, though Gary could see the frustration in his eyes. Princess Kira presided over the Defense Committee, her specialty. She commanded respect here, her tactical knowledge apparently exceptional. Even species that towered over her listened when she spoke about fleet movements and strategic installations. The border incursions near the Kelmar sector continue, reported a Kryn general, his reptilian features grave. 3 colonies attacked in 2 months. Pirates or organized military? Kira asked sharply. Unknown, Your Highness. They strike fast and retreat before we can respond. Kira studied the holographic display. Double patrols in adjacent sectors. Establish a rapid response team at Station Kelmar 7. She moved pieces on the display like a chess master. Despite himself, Gary was impressed. She might be arrogant, but she wasn't incompetent. Then her eyes fell on the human section. Perhaps our human observers have suggestions. Her tone dripped with false courtesy. Earth must have extensive experience with space piracy by now. Laughter rippled through the chamber. Earth had barely 3 deep space vessels. Ambassador Chen smiled politely and said nothing. The humiliation was calculated and complete. Gary clenched his fists under the table but kept his face neutral. Ambassador Chen had been clear in their briefings. They were guests, observers, representatives of a species still proving itself. Every reaction would be judged. But it stung. After the session, Gary returned to the human quarters. The delegation had been assigned a modest wing in the station's outer ring, far from the luxurious central sections where the major powers resided. He found Ambassador Chen reviewing notes, his expression weary. Sir, how long do we tolerate being treated like this? Gary asked before he could stop himself. Chen looked up. As long as necessary. They mock us openly. Yes, they do. Chen set down his tablet. Gary, do you know why I selected you for this mission? My service record. Your restraint. Chen stood and walked to the window. I've read your file. 3 tours in conflict zones. Multiple commendations. But what stood out was Jakarta. When your unit was surrounded and insulted by the local militia, you didn't retaliate. You waited, assessed, and found a peaceful solution. Gary remembered. That patience had saved lives. Out here, we're outnumbered 1,000,000,000, Chen continued. We win through patience and proving our worth, not pride. And if they never give us that chance, then we create it. Days passed in the same pattern. Morning sessions where humans observed silently while other species debated policy. Afternoons of networking that humans were politely excluded from. Evenings alone in their quarters. Princess Kira continued to preside with elegant disdain. She never spoke to the humans directly again, which somehow felt worse than her mockery. They'd become invisible. On the 5th day, Gary noticed something odd. During a trade negotiation, a delegate from the Therex Union kept glancing at Princess Kira with barely concealed hostility. The Therex were insectoid beings, their chitinous features hard to read, but body language transcended species. Gary made a note in his personal log. Probably nothing, but his security training taught him to notice patterns. That evening, while walking the public concourses, he overheard a conversation. Two Therics diplomats speaking in their clicking language. Gary's translator implant caught fragments. The princess must be taught humility. When the moment comes, our people will remember this insult. They noticed Gary and fell silent, their compound eyes fixing on him before they scuttled away. Gary's instinct screamed warning. He reported it immediately to Ambassador Chen. Political theater, Chen said after consideration. The Therics lost a territorial dispute to the Valens last year. There's bad blood, but actual violence at a summit would be unprecedented. But possible? Anything is possible. Stay alert. The summit's main event approached, the Trials of Unity. An ancient tradition where species demonstrated cultural achievements. Combat exhibitions, artistic performances, technological marvels. It was part celebration, part competition. Humans had been granted a slot, though scheduled last and given only 10 minutes. What do we even show them? Lieutenant Park asked during their planning meeting. Our ships are primitive compared to theirs. Our weapons outdated. Our art, they'd consider quaint at best. Ambassador Chen smiled. Then we show them something they don't have. He outlined his plan. It was risky, personal, and completely different from the grand displays other species would present. But it was authentically human. Gary volunteered to be part of the presentation. Meanwhile, Princess Kira prepared for her own role. As host species, she would give the closing address and present honors to the most impressive displays. She reviewed the schedule with Commander Vex. The humans are presenting. She seemed surprised they'd been included. Protocol requires all members, even provisional ones. What could they possibly show that would interest anyone? She waved dismissively. Place them last. If delegates leave early, it won't disrupt the important presentations. As you wish, Your Highness. Kira felt a twinge of something. Not quite guilt, but close. She pushed it away. Her assessment of humans was based on facts. They were weak, technologically behind, politically insignificant. Kindness would be dishonest. The trials began with spectacular displays. The Kryn demonstrated advanced plasma weaponry that could level mountains. The Lux beings created artistic light sculptures that existed in 4 dimensions. The Thresh warriors performed combat rituals that shook the arena floor. Each presentation received thunderous approval from the assembled delegates. Princess Kira watched from the royal box, genuinely enjoying the demonstrations. This was the summit's true purpose, she believed. Reminding everyone of the strength and culture that bound the civilized galaxy together. Finally, the human presentation was announced. Many delegates were indeed leaving, ready to begin the evening's festivities. Those who remained did so more from politeness than interest. Ambassador Chen walked to the center of the arena alone. No weapons, no technology, no grand display. Just one human standing in a space designed for giants. We cannot match your military might, he began, his voice amplified. We cannot show you technologies you haven't surpassed. We are newcomers to the stars, children among ancients. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably. Was this a concession speech? But we can share what made us reach for the stars in the first place. He gestured, and the arena lights dimmed. A hologram appeared. Not of battles or ships, but of Earth. A slowly rotating blue marble. This is our home. One small world. For thousands of years, we were divided. Hundreds of nations, thousands of cultures, countless reasons to fight. The hologram shifted, showing human history. War and peace. Struggle and triumph. Pain and beauty. Gary watched from the sidelines as Ambassador Chen continued. The hologram showed moments of human compassion amid conflict. Soldiers sharing food with enemies. Strangers saving strangers. People choosing peace when war was easier. We don't offer you strength, Chen said quietly. We offer you perspective. Every species here was once confined to one world. You remember that struggle. The choice between conquest and cooperation. The hologram shifted to space exploration. First satellites, first moon landing, first Mars colony. Each step hard-won. We chose cooperation. Not because we're weak, but because we learned that survival requires more than strength. It requires hope. The final image showed the human delegation arriving at the summit. Small figures stepping off their modest ship, looking up at the vast station with wonder. We come before you not as warriors or traders, but as students. We hope to learn. We hope to contribute. We hope that someday, you'll see us not as lesser, but as partners. The presentation ended. Silence filled the arena. Then, slowly, some delegates began to applaud. Not the thunderous approval given to the weapon demonstrations, but something more thoughtful. Princess Kira felt an unexpected tightness in her chest. She'd been prepared to endure a clumsy display. Instead, she'd witnessed something genuine. Something that reminded her why the summit existed in the first place. For the first time, she truly looked at the human delegation. And noticed Gary, standing at attention, his eyes scanning the crowd with professional vigilance. The evening reception was the summit's largest social event. Delegates from all species mingled in the grand ballroom, a space with adjustable gravity and atmosphere zones to accommodate everyone. Princess Kira moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations on a successful summit. But her thoughts kept returning to the human presentation. It had been unexpected. Unsettling. It challenged assumptions she'd held since childhood. Commander Vex appeared at her side. Your Highness, several delegates have commented favorably on the human display. Have they? Kira tried to sound disinterested. The Lux ambassador called it refreshingly honest. High praise from their kind. Kira spotted Ambassador Chen speaking with a group of minor delegates who'd previously ignored him. The dynamic had shifted slightly. Humans were no longer invisible. Perhaps I judged too quickly, she murmured. Your Highness. Nothing. She turned away, then noticed something odd. 3 Therex delegates stood in a tight cluster near the east entrance, their attention fixed on her. When she looked directly at them, they dispersed. Strange. The Therex had been formally polite throughout the summit, but cold. Natural given the territorial dispute, but their behavior tonight seemed different. Furtive. Gary noticed them too. He'd been casually monitoring the room, a habit from his security training. The Therex delegates met briefly with 2 others from species he didn't recognize, then separated again. Classic pattern for coordinating something. He moved closer, trying to appear casual. You're doing it again, Lieutenant Park said, appearing beside Gary with a glass of what the station called wine but tasted like battery acid. Doing what? That thing where you pretend to socialize but you're actually running surveillance. She smiled. I do it too. What did you spot? Gary hesitated, then shared his observations about the Therex delegates. Park frowned. You think they're planning something? I think they're coordinating. Could be innocent. But your instincts say otherwise. Gary's instincts had kept him alive through 3 combat tours. Right now, they were screaming warnings. I'm going to alert Ambassador Chen. Before he could move, the lights flickered. A common occurrence on space stations, but timing mattered. In that brief moment of darkness, Gary saw movement. One of the Therex delegates reached into his formal robes. Training took over. Gary analyzed angles, trajectories, intent. The delegate was positioned 30 meters from Princess Kira's current location. The object emerging from the robes had a distinctive shape, compact, waded forward. A weapon. Gary had perhaps 3 seconds before the Therex achieved a clear line of sight. The princess was surrounded by guests, her security detail positioned for crowd control, not direct threats. They'd been lulled by decades of peaceful summits. Time seemed to slow. Gary ran the scenarios. Shout a warning. Too slow, might cause panic that masked the attack. Alert security. Same problem. Tackle the assailant. Too far away. Only one option remained. Gary sprinted directly toward Princess Kira, his path intersecting between her and the Therex delegate. Delegates scattered in confusion as the human security officer charged through the crowd. Princess Kira turned at the commotion, her expression shifting from surprise to indignation as she saw a human running straight at her. "How dare you," she began. The Therex fired. The weapon was a compressed plasma thrower, illegal in civilized space, capable of burning through armor plating. At this range, it would vaporize an unprotected target. Gary reached the princess exactly as the blast fired. He had no time to explain, no time to be gentle. He grabbed Kira and threw both of them to the ground, his body covering hers. The plasma blast struck Gary's back. His uniform was standard security issue, with minimal protective weave. It bought him perhaps half a second. The searing pain was immediate and absolute. He felt his skin burn, smelled his own flesh cooking. But half a second was enough. The blast's main force dissipated across his back instead of hitting the princess directly. He'd succeeded in creating a human shield. Gary heard screaming. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Security forces activated, alarms blared, and delegates panicked in multiple languages. Through the haze of pain, Gary remained conscious just long enough to feel Princess Kira moving beneath him, alive and unharmed. Then darkness took him. Princess Kira gasped for breath, pinned beneath the human's weight. The smell of burned flesh made her gag. Around her, security forces swarmed. Commander Vex appeared, pulling the human off her with help from 2 guards. "Your Highness, are you injured?" Vex scanned her with medical equipment. "I'm fine." She looked down at Gary's unconscious form. The burn across his back was horrific. "He saved me." The Therex assassin lay stunned on the floor, subdued by security. 2 accomplices were being dragged away. The plot had failed, but barely. "Medical team, now." Commander Vex shouted into his comm. A medical unit arrived within seconds, anti-grav stretcher deployed. They loaded Gary carefully, their expressions grim. One medic, a Lux being of pure energy, phased partially into Gary's body to assess damage. Severe plasma burns, 3rd and 4th degree covering 30% of his back. Going into shock. He needs surgery immediately. The Lux's glow dimmed with concern. His species is fragile. Survival probability is uncertain. "Do everything possible," Princess Kira commanded, her voice shaking. "Everything." Ambassador Chen pushed through the crowd, his diplomatic composure shattered. "Gary. What happened?" "He saved my life," Kira said simply. She looked at the ambassador, really looked at him for the first time. "Your officer threw himself in front of an assassin's blast meant for me." Chen's face went pale. "Is he being taken to medical? You should go with him." The waiting room outside the medical bay was designed for multiple species, with varied seating and atmospheric options. Ambassador Chen sat in the human section, his head in his hands. Lieutenant Park paced. The rest of the delegation waited in shocked silence. Princess Kira arrived an hour later, having changed from her burned formal robes into simple attire. Commander Vex and 2 guards accompanied her. Chen stood immediately. "Your Highness." "Ambassador. I came for news." "Still in surgery. They've been working on him for 3 hours." Kira sat down in a human-sized chair, ignoring the awkward fit. Tell me about him. The one who saved me. Chen seemed surprised by the request but answered. Gary Ross. 26 years old. Former military, decorated service. Joined the diplomatic corps 6 months ago. This was his first deep space assignment. He has family. A sister on Earth. Parents deceased. Kira absorbed this. He's so young. They all are, you humans. Your lifespans are brief even if untouched by violence. We make the most of the time we have, Chen replied quietly. He didn't hesitate, Kira said, more to herself than anyone. I saw his face. He knew exactly what he was doing. He chose to shield me with his own body. Park stopped pacing. That's Gary. He doesn't think about himself first. Never has. The medical bay doors opened. A surgeon emerged, a multi-limbed thresh whose species pioneered trauma medicine. Her expression was neutral. He's alive, the surgeon said without preamble. But the damage was extensive. We've used regenerative tissue grafts from our best supplies, pain suppressors, and cellular reconstruction fields. He'll survive. Ambassador Chen's shoulders sagged with relief. Can we see him? Not yet. He's unconscious, and his body needs time to accept the grafts. Human physiology is resilient in some ways, fragile in others. The next 20 hours are critical. Princess Kira stood. He'll have access to the best care available. Royal medical resources, anything he requires. I'm authorizing it personally. The surgeon bowed respectfully. That will help, Your Highness. We'll do everything possible. After the surgeon left, Kira turned to Ambassador Chen. I owe your officer a debt beyond words. I owe all of you an apology beyond measure. Your Highness. Please, let me speak. Kira's voice wavered slightly. I dismissed your people from the moment you arrived. I considered you weak, primitive, unworthy of respect. I was cruel because I believed strength was all that mattered. She looked toward the medical bay doors. Then one of you, this Gary, proved me catastrophically wrong. He had every reason to let me face the consequences of my own arrogance. Instead, he sacrificed his body to save mine. Chen studied her carefully. What will you do now? Ensure he recovers. Then, if he'll allow it, thank him properly. She paused. And reconsider everything I thought I knew about humanity. Gary woke to muted light and the hum of medical equipment. His back felt strange, numb and tight simultaneously. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Easy, a soft voice said. A medical attendant appeared, a luxe being whose glow was dimmed to avoid hurting Gary's eyes. You've had extensive surgery. Movement should be minimal. Where am I? Gary's voice came out as a rasp. Medical Bay, Summit Station. You've been unconscious for 18 hours. Memory returned in fragments. The ballroom. The weapon. The princess. The pain. Is Princess Kira alive and unharmed, thanks to you? The attendant adjusted and You're something of a hero, Gary Ross. Hero. The word felt absurd. He'd done what anyone would do. What training demanded. What was right. The attendant continued, you've had multiple visitors. Your ambassador has been here 6 times. Your delegation takes shifts waiting outside. And Princess Kira has come every 4 hours to check your status personally. That surprised Gary. The princess? She seems quite concerned about your recovery. Before Gary could process this, the door opened. Commander Vex entered, his bearing military formal but his expression unusually warm. You're awake. Good. Her Highness will want to know immediately. He studied Gary with open curiosity. I've served the princess for 15 years. I've never seen her so affected by another's sacrifice. I just did my job, Gary managed. Your job was to observe diplomatic proceedings, not stop assassinations. Vex's expression turned serious. You saved her life. That means something. To her, to the Empire, to everyone. 3 days later, Gary could sit up without his vision blurring. The burns were healing remarkably well thanks to advanced Valen medical technology, though the doctors warned he'd have scarring. Princess Kira finally visited when he was conscious. She arrived without fanfare, just Commander Vex at her side. When she saw Gary sitting up in the medical bed, her expression flickered with relief. Your Highness. Gary tried to stand, but she waved him down. Please, don't. You're still recovering. She pulled a chair close to his bed, a gesture that Commander Vex's raised eyebrow suggested was highly unusual for royalty. For a moment, neither spoke. Kira seemed to struggle with words, something Gary suspected didn't happen often. I came to thank you, she said finally. And to apologize. You don't need to apologize, Your Highness. I do. Her silver eyes met his directly. From the moment your delegation arrived, I treated you with contempt. I mocked your people, dismissed your worth, considered you beneath notice. I was wrong, profoundly and shamefully wrong. Gary didn't know what to say. An alien princess was apologizing to him, a basic security officer. Kira continued, you had every reason to let me face that assassin alone. My own arrogance had earned it. But you didn't hesitate. You threw yourself in front of a blast that should have killed you. Why? Gary considered the question. Because it was right. Because you didn't deserve to die for political games. Because that's what we do, humans. We protect those who can't protect themselves. Even those who treated you cruelly. Especially them. That's when it matters most. Kira felt something shift inside her, a perspective she'd held her entire life suddenly revealing itself as limited and flawed. This human, this supposedly weak and primitive being, had shown her what true strength was. Not military might or political power, but moral courage. The summit has been extended, she said, changing topic slightly. The assassination attempt created political complications. The Therex Union denies involvement, though the evidence is clear. We're negotiating appropriate responses. Politics, Gary said with a slight smile. Necessary politics. But that's not why I'm really here. Kira leaned forward. Gary Ross, you've shown me something I needed to see. You've demonstrated that my understanding of strength was incomplete. I want to learn more. Learn more. About humans. About Earth. About what drives someone to sacrifice themselves for a stranger who wronged them. Her expression was earnest. Would you teach me? Gary was stunned. A princess of the most powerful empire in 3 galaxies wanted him to teach her. I'm not sure what I could possibly teach you, Your Highness. Everything I don't know. Which, I'm discovering, is considerable. She glanced at Commander Vex, who nodded encouragingly. When you've recovered, I want you to meet with me daily. Not as princess and subject, but as 2 people trying to understand each other. Will you agree? It was perhaps the strangest request Gary had ever received. It was also an opportunity that could change everything for Earth's relationship with the galactic community. I'll need to clear it with Ambassador Chen, he said. Already done. He was enthusiastically supportive. Gary smiled despite himself. Then yes, Your Highness. I'd be honored. Over the following weeks, as Gary recovered, he and Princess Kira met regularly. At first, their conversations were formal, awkward. A princess and a security officer had little common ground. But gradually, barriers fell. Gary told her about Earth. Not the sanitized diplomatic version, but the truth. The struggles, the failures, the small triumphs. He spoke about his childhood in a poor neighborhood, his decision to join the military to escape poverty, his realization that service was about more than himself. Kira shared stories of the Valen Empire. She'd been raised to rule, trained from birth in warfare and diplomacy. She'd never questioned her role or her people's superiority. It was simply the way things were. But you did question it, Gary said during one conversation. After the attack. After you showed me I was wrong, Kira corrected. That was painful. I built my entire identity on being strong, being superior. Accepting that I'd been weak in the ways that truly matter required dismantling everything I believed. They were walking through the station's observation deck, Gary's first real exercise since the injury. The view of space was breathtaking. Strength isn't the problem, Gary offered. It's what you do with it. You're learning to use yours differently. Thanks to you. The medical reports were encouraging. Gary would recover fully, though he'd carry scars. The summit was concluding, delegates preparing to return to their worlds. The Therex conspirators had been tried and convicted, creating a diplomatic incident that would take years to fully resolve. But something else was happening, quieter but potentially more significant. Princess Kira had begun advocating for Earth's full membership in the galactic community. The final session of the summit was traditionally ceremonial, a chance for delegates to celebrate successful negotiations. This year, it carried extra weight. Princess Kira stood before the assembly, her presence commanding as always, but her message different from any she'd delivered before. This summit began with assumptions, she said. We brought our certainties, our prejudices, our established hierarchies. We knew who mattered and who didn't. We were confident in our understanding of strength and weakness. The hall was silent, all attention on her. Then someone we dismissed as weak showed us the greatest strength of all. A human security officer named Gary Ross threw himself in front of an assassin's blast meant for me. He nearly died protecting someone who treated him with nothing but contempt. Gary sat with the human delegation, suddenly very aware of hundreds of alien eyes turning toward him. He wanted to sink into his chair. I've spent the weeks since that moment learning about humanity, Kira continued. What I've discovered has changed me. These people have endured wars, poverty, disease, and disaster. They've barely reached the stars. By our measures, they're weak. She paused, letting the word hang. But they've also built something we've forgotten in our strength. They've maintained compassion. They choose cooperation over domination when possible. They believe in sacrifice for others, even strangers, even enemies. That's not weakness. That's evolution we've somehow missed. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Therefore, I'm proposing immediate elevation of Earth from provisional to full membership in the Galactic Council. They've earned it, not through military might, but through demonstrating the values we claim to cherish but often ignore. The vote took 3 hours of debate. Some delegates agreed immediately, moved by Kira's speech and Gary's actions. Others resisted, citing Earth's limited technology and small territorial holdings. In the end, the measure passed by a narrow margin. Earth would become a full member, with voting rights and full diplomatic recognition. When the results were announced, the human delegation sat in stunned silence. Then Lieutenant Park grabbed Gary in a hug that made his still-healing back ache. Ambassador Chen was openly crying. We did it, Chen whispered. We're in. After the session, Princess Kira found Gary on the observation deck, his usual retreat when overwhelmed. How does it feel? She asked, joining him at the viewport. Surreal. A month ago, we were barely tolerated. Now we have full membership. You earned it. Your actions started this, but your delegation's patience and dignity throughout maintained it. She looked out at the stars. I've been thinking about what comes next. Your Highness. Kira. When we're alone, please call me Kira. Gary blinked in surprise. First names with royalty violated about a dozen protocols, but he nodded. Kira. Better. She smiled. I've been offered a diplomatic posting. My father believes I need broader experience before I inherit the throne. I'm considering requesting Earth as my assignment. Gary's heart skipped. Earth? I want to understand your world better. See where you come from, meet your people, learn what shaped the human who saved my life. She turned to face him directly. And I was hoping you might consider returning to Earth as well, as my cultural liaison. I'm just a security officer. You're the person who changed the course of galactic history. I can't think of anyone better. The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks aboard a Valan diplomatic vessel, far faster than the human ship that had brought the delegation to the summit. Gary spent the time recovering fully and helping Kira prepare for a world utterly different from anything she'd experienced. Wait until you experience weather, Lieutenant Park said during one briefing. Real weather, not climate-controlled environments. Kira was fascinated. I've read about rain, but never experienced it. You'll love it or hate it, Gary said. Sometimes both. As Earth grew larger in the viewport, Gary felt a mixture of emotions. He'd left as an anonymous security officer on a mission expected to accomplish little. He was returning as the human who'd saved an alien princess and changed humanity's standing in the galaxy. The media attention would be intense. His sister had already sent a dozen messages, each more excited than the last. The president wanted to meet him. The whole world knew his name. It was terrifying. You'll adapt, Kira said quietly, reading his expression. You're stronger than you think. Says the princess who commands fleets. Says the friend who knows what true strength looks like. Friend. The word settled between them, comfortable and right. What had started as a political necessity had become something genuine. Gary had no idea where it would lead, but he was ready to find out. The ship entered Earth's atmosphere, and Gary saw his home planet spread out below. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. Beautiful and fragile. Welcome to Earth, Kira. She pressed close to the viewport, her expression filled with wonder. It's beautiful. I understand now why you fought so hard to prove yourselves. A world this precious deserves to be protected. The landing was orchestrated chaos. Security details from 3 nations, diplomatic officials, and media from around the world descended on the spaceport. Gary and the delegation were treated like heroes, which was overwhelming and exhausting. But through it all, Kira remained at Gary's side. She deflected attention when he was overwhelmed, shared credit generously, and displayed a warmth that surprised the human officials who'd expected alien coldness. At the state dinner that evening, the president toasted the new alliance between Earth and the Valan Empire. Ambassador Chen gave a speech about cooperation and mutual respect. Gary was asked to say a few words and barely managed to thank everyone before his nerves took over. Later, escaping to a balcony overlooking the city, Gary found Kira already there, staring at the skyline with fascination. Your cities glow, she said. Like stars brought to ground. Light pollution, Gary corrected. We're working on it. She laughed, a sound he'd heard more frequently as they'd grown comfortable with each other. Always honest. I appreciate that about you. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city. So much had changed in just a few weeks. Earth had gone from provisional member to full partner. Humanity had proven itself. Gary had become someone important, though he still didn't quite believe it. What happens now? He asked. Now we build something new. An alliance based on understanding, not dominance. A friendship between worlds. Kira turned to him. And we continue learning from each other. I have much more to discover about humanity. We're pretty ordinary, really. You threw yourself in front of a plasma blast to save someone you barely knew. There's nothing ordinary about that. Her expression turned serious. Gary, I want you to know that what you did that day didn't just save my life. It changed my life. You made me question everything I believed and become someone better. I'll be grateful for that always. 6 months later, Gary stood in a new galactic embassy in Geneva, watching representatives from a dozen worlds work together on trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense pacts. Earth had integrated into the galactic community faster than anyone expected, thanks largely to the goodwill generated by the summit incident. Princess Kira had remained on Earth as the Valen Empire's ambassador, a posting she'd requested specifically. She and Gary had fallen into an easy partnership, working together to bridge the gaps between human and alien understanding. Their relationship had evolved beyond friendship into something neither quite had words for. Romance between species was rare but not unheard of. They were taking things slowly, learning each other's cultures and contexts. Today was special though. Earth was hosting its first diplomatic summit, bringing together the same delegates who'd dismissed humanity just months before. The change was remarkable. Kira found Gary reviewing security protocols, still the cautious officer despite his new diplomatic role. Always working, she teased. Keeping you safe is a full-time job, he replied with a smile. I'm not the one who nearly died being heroic. And I'd do it again without hesitation. She took his hand, a gesture that had become natural between them. I know. That's what makes you extraordinary. The summit was about to begin. Delegates were arriving. Earth would demonstrate how far it had come, hosting discussions about galactic policy as equals rather than observers. As Gary and Kira walked toward the assembly hall together, he reflected on the journey. A few months ago, he'd been dismissed as weak, his species considered irrelevant. Now, humanity had a voice in galactic affairs, and he'd played a part in making that happen. Not through violence or domination, but through doing what was right when it mattered most. The princess had dismissed humans as weak. Then one human had shielded her from certain death and shown her what true strength meant. And in doing so, changed the galaxy forever.